Guys, my next big dog is somebody I've watched, I've admired the way he had time. Actually, at one point I called him the Iceman. He never looked like he was under tension. He would never look like he was threatened by anything. And I always wondered what made him feel so calm, composed. And I wanted to actually dig deep in him to be able to understand what kind of mindset. Today, my guest, we're not going to talk about too much about the stats, about the footy, but I want to be able to understand the inside of his mind, how he made everything look slow, how he looked like he had so much time. He's a guy who's played on the big stage, played at the MCG, played with some of the best players. MCG, Collingwood, and come back here to West Australia, played with one of the biggest clubs, West Coast Eagles. I cannot wait to dive in to be able to understand how he made the game look easy when he was under pressure. What are the things that drove him to become who he was? And just some of the experience he's been able to take from football to be able to adapt in his life. Guys, welcome my next client or surprise, Wellingham.
How are you, Tom? Thanks for having me.
Client. I'm used to dealing with clients. So most of the time,
you have tried to train me a couple of times.
Yeah. Like I'm used to talking about clients. So my mind straight when I talk to people, I'm thinking about client, but my guest. Now, thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me along.
Yeah. I just want to start by saying, what is this legend guy doing?
What am I doing with myself now?
Yeah.
I'm doing a number of different things at the moment, so I'm quite busy, but I've always got time for you, mate. Yeah. But I'm working for the Wallich Foundation, which is the shirt I'm wearing right now, and I work in our employment team. So the Wallich Foundation works across employment, justice reintegration, education through our Deadly Sister Girls program and our employment program, which I'm part of. Yeah. We've also got a business hub as well, which helps Indigenous-owned businesses progress or grow or even just get off the ground. So a number of different things there. And I'm doing some commentating with the ABC still, which I really enjoy. I started doing that as soon as I finished. And what's that now? Gee whiz. 6 years I've been doing that, and doing some coaching, which I've done for the last couple of years with the state program. So helping the WA 18 boys. Are they boys or men? But we're not sure. But so I'm doing a number of different things.
Yeah. Now I just want to go back. Draft pick. You've been drafted at a very
not drafted.
Yeah?
I was rookie listed actually.
Yeah.
So I missed out on the draft.
Yeah. Talk to us about missing on the draft pick. How most people have never been in this position.
Yeah.
Were you expecting to be drafted and you didn't get drafted? Or take us through that. And how did you feel?
Yeah. I mean, I never really expected to get picked up. Yeah. It was kind of like a pleasant surprise is how I've kind of phrased it previously, because I missed a little bit of footy at the start of the year through a concussion. I missed out on the state team that year. Yeah. But luckily enough, managed to play some good footy towards the back end of that cold season, and ended up making the team of the year, which I was really proud of at that point. Get asked to attend the state combine, so I didn't even go to the national draft or anything. National combine, but did some good numbers. Luckily, tested well, and I think that made my profile look even more impressive. Draft day, kind of get together with the managers group of the other players who are, under his tutelage, and sitting there, kind of waiting for your name to get read out, and it doesn't happen. A few of the other guys in the room did, which made it a little bit harder. But I remember speaking to Collingwood, I can't remember if it was that afternoon or the next day, but they said that if I was available with their pick in the rookie draft, that they would be taking me. So I knew that I was going to end up somewhere, but obviously the disappointment of not getting picked up in the draft, it honestly wasn't massive for me, because I just was looking for an opportunity. I just wanted to get my foot in the door. I knew that once I did get my opportunity, that I'd be able to display, what I can bring to a football field, or even just my training standards and things like that. So, Yeah. The disappointment was fleeting because I managed to be uplifted again a couple of days later, or over those next few days when I was told that I would be given an opportunity at the AFL level.
Okay. Now, young age.
Yeah, I was 18.
Yep. You have to uproot yourself from here. How did you to go to Collingwood? How was that on a young guy? Maybe I'm assuming you were leaving home by then.
Yeah.
Because most of us might not understand this a lot. I just want to see the mindset of, okay, now you're living here, you're going to Collingwood.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of pressure. It's a big club. So many people support the club. What was it like for you to leave WA, which looks like a small town, to a big town? And what was going on in your mind?
Yeah, I think I more so saw it as like I was getting an opportunity to kind of spread my wings and go out on my own and do my own thing. And I hadn't been to Melbourne. I hadn't been to an MCG game. I didn't grow up constantly being around the country. I'd really spent a lot of my youth in Perth. Went on holidays and things like that, but overseas, but never really went around the rest of the country. So I kind of just saw it as a really great opportunity to kind of spread my wings. I felt like I was an independent person for an 18-year-old. My parents, I was actually having this discussion with a couple of co-workers today, that my parents from a young age, they made sure I knew how to cook and clean and kind of look after myself. And at the time I probably hated it on reflection, but it was probably a really good thing for me because it enabled me to, have that confidence to go over there on my own. But it's also really, strongly instilled into you from the footy club that there's a huge support network there. So my mindset was really just about embracing the opportunity that was given to me.
At 18, I'm going to touch a little bit of this. With your culture, it's really hard. In that sense, and I'm not taking anything away from it. You are an Indigenous young 18-year-old boy. You haven't gone to Melbourne. You haven't been able to do with that pressure. How do you come from there? Because from what I understand, you're very close to your parents. Culture is important to you. Your people are very close to you, and you're taking this kid from those surrounding, dropping him.
Yeah, that's probably like when you sit back and look over your time in the system, it's probably one of the things that made it a little bit frustrating was that I didn't get to be around my family growing up. I'm the oldest. I've got 5 younger sisters, and so I left, and so they were all children when I left. Like they were really, really young. I was still a child, obviously, but they were really young. I think my oldest sister would have been, she would have been like 5 or 6 when I left. And so then I come back, and the transition. I obviously saw them a lot, but I didn't get to be around them growing up. That's something that was a little bit of a tough part of being away. And you look back on that and go, oh, geez, I missed out on being a part of my sister's youth. But I still felt really connected to them while I was away. But that was probably one of the harder things. My parents came over a lot. So I got to spend lots of time, with my parents in Melbourne. But being away from Perth, it was my job, and so it's what I had to do, and it was a focus for a period of time. It was only a small period of my life, and so I was like, I've just got to tough it out for a little bit. You make a decision. If you want to do something that you love and you're given an opportunity, you just kind of have to have the mindset of, all right, I'll tough it out for this period. And then, I ended up eventually coming home to finish my career, but that's probably the one thing is missing out on my sister's youth growing up.
Now, we're going to go back to Collingwood when you arrived in Collingwood, but I want to be able to just touch this. There was a young, and I don't want to really focus on the culture, but there's a little bit of a gap in there. If there's a young Indigenous kid who's going to Melbourne, he's been picked to another club, what would you do different compared to what you went through? Like to make them, maybe you just had a really good mindset that, I need to shut this down. I've been given an opportunity. Yes, maybe there's a young Indigenous kid, very good at playing, but the uprooting them to Melbourne or another state could be too much for them?
Yeah, I think that
What would they do?
the challenges around Indigenous players could go into the AFL system is so diverse, and that's what's really tough for Indigenous, I suppose, processes and support is that every player has different levels of, connection to whether it be family or where they're from, how much time they need to spend around their family to feel really comfortable. Yeah. I know a teammate of mine, Brad Dick, who got drafted in the same draft. Yeah, his parents moved over with him because it was, for them, they didn't want to be away from Brad, and I think that he needed that level of support around him. Yeah. So that was something that they were willing and able to do. Yeah. So that's a really big part of it as well. They were able to go over there and continue doing their work and find a place for them to live. And he lived around the corner from me it was really good. I used to go around there and get a feed and hang out at Brad's place a fair bit. Yeah. But and it's something that the AFL is trying to really develop is their process around support, but everybody's different. Yeah. And so while I might have been comfortable, you see a lot of players who come from far more remote areas than I did. Like I grew up in Perth City. I'm from Perth. Yeah. All my family's here. Me leaving to go to another city, it wasn't so much the city, whereas some players, they get city shock. It's like, oh my God, the size of this place is overwhelming. Yeah. The cold. You go to Melbourne, you're used to living in Broome or up in the Kimberleys, anywhere up there or something. It's a not just a shock for the the aesthetics of it and what the place looks like in terms of it being a concrete jungle, but it's also the climate. You got to get used to a different climate. So everybody's, I suppose, requirements are going to be different. And for me, the AFL system actually enabled me to probably connect to my cultural identity more through, the programs and being around other Indigenous players who were, going through the same things. Or part of the thing that I spoken about was that I had a really, I suppose, not a conflict, but I've got a white dad and I've got an Indigenous mum, and so they separated, and it felt like I had two lives. So I've got my Indigenous side of my family, and then I've got my, white. My dad's from the UK, moved out here when he was 21. So while I've obviously got my Indigenous I've got my Indigenous heritage, but I had that kind of internal conflict on where do I sit. And so the AFL enabled me to feel more comfortable in having my Indigenous background because I was around a lot of other players who were also in the same boat as me. Yeah. And whereas I hadn't had that exposure, to kids who it was either you were black or you were white. And so when I was growing up, it was like, well, I'm not quite white enough, and I'm also not quite black enough.
No man's land in between there.
Whereas, I'm thrust around all these other people who are similar to me. Yeah. And so it really enabled me to feel a little bit more comfortable in that.
There's a kid maybe in Kimberley, in Broome, they're going to be drafted to go to Melbourne or Sydney, blah, blah. What is the one thing you think the system could do? I know they're all different. If you had to be told, well, this one thing you think we could do on the system to make it better for them, what would that be?
I think just being flexible and being, fluid in the way that they're able to offer support. If you can't I think that's the most important thing, is being able to be malleable in what you're offering and, not cookie cut everybody the same because, everybody's different. Everybody's requirements or needs are different.
Ma, you played in big stages in AFL.
Yeah, I was very lucky.
Yeah. No, there's no luck in life.
There's always an element of luck.
There's no luck. There's no luck in life. And for me, maybe coming from a mindset perspective, I always say luck is hard work meeting an opportunity. So you sit home and say you're lucky or it ain't going to happen. So you worked hard to put yourself in those positions. But you played on big stages, but you never looked like you were under pressure or anything worried you. What kind of mindset did you have to develop to be able to look like that? Because you just never looked like you're pressured. It reminds me of somebody like Pemberbury. Like he always looks like he's got time. You looked like that when you were...
So, it didn't feel like it. No,
you're a magician.
I think that, all sports people have like a way that they play the game. And I think that I saw the game quite well, and when I had possession of the ball, I honestly never felt like I was overly flustered, and sometimes that was to my benefit, and sometimes it was to my detriment. So I always just tried to play my game the way I felt comfortable, and I was comfortable because of a process. Like I always think that the way you performed on game day was a result of the process you put in during the week. And I got a lot of confidence in repetition. I got a lot of confidence through, routine. And I think that, you say that you look like you have a lot of time, but that was because I trained
a lot.
I trained myself to make myself feel like I had time. In scenarios where, some people might rush at training, I would always be making sure that I took my time to do it right, even if I was under pressure. And also, I don't mind getting hit or something like that. So you get, and some people don't like getting tackled, whereas I don't care if I get tackled. You're going to try and get away from it, or there's different elements to your game that I just made sure that you always just go back to your training.
So when you talk about repetition, had done things, was this an aspect of skills? Was it something to do with endurance? Was it something to... What is the one thing you looked at in the game and thought, I need to be able to do this a lot? Or what is... was it the kicking skill, the handball, the positioning, or was it reading the game better? Because, when you talk about I had to do a lot of repetition, there's maybe an aspect... Every player at IFL does repetition. But you look different from them. So maybe there was an age or there's something you looked at the game and goes, this will give me a bit of an advantage.
Yeah. I think that everybody plays the game differently as well. Yeah. And so there are guys who might look rushed, but they don't feel it. And, I obviously sometimes didn't look like I was rushed, but I kind of felt it. So
sitting on the couch looks different from being on the field.
Yeah, exactly. It does. I don't know. I think that it was something that I always just kind of made sure that I never rushed my decision making. So making sure that your ability to know what your surroundings are and know what's going on around you is, and sometimes I would do it completely wrong. I'd be in the wrong position and teammates would be telling me to move or whatever. And but I guess that's also part of my character and who I am as a person, as I'm quite laid back and cruisy, and that obviously just comes out in a reflection of the way I played the game.
I'm sure there were some games that, being in Melbourne, playing for Collingwood, there's some games you had a shocker.
Yeah.
How did you bounce back from pressure from the media, pressure from the coach? You've had a bad game. What are the things you went to? Is there people you went to? Is there things you believed in? Did you look at psychologists, or what are the things that you went to when you were having one of those moments that?
I mean, you can have different kind of dips. You can have a game where you might play poorly. You can have a quarter where you might play poorly. And it's just about resetting your focuses and what you kind of were focused on.
What are you telling yourself when you've had that bad quarter?
Well, you're telling yourself, okay, go back to what I do well. What are my focuses for the game? So usually you'd have 2 or 3 points that you would be focusing on throughout the game that you can do well. Things that you might have been told during the week through your review that you need to work on. So you've always got these kind of things that you're thinking about during a game that you're referencing. And so you have a bad quarter and you go, okay, how am I getting involved in the game? And you go, I don't actually, and I think that that's what makes teams really good teams, is not going outside what they need to do in their role. You don't have to do anything exceptional to be able to play your role. You just have to be able to, when you're required to execute. And so I think that's a really big thing, is like, you have a bad quarter. It doesn't mean you have to have a twice as good quarter the next quarter. You just have to go back and do what you do well. Now, if you do manage to go back out there and do what you do well and have a twice as good a quarter, that's a bonus. But that shouldn't be your focus after a bad one. Same as if you have a bad week or you've had a bad month.
That's where I was going.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, you've had a bad week. That doesn't mean that the next game you go out and play has to be twice as good. You don't have to be best on ground or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there are probably some players who do think like that, and the really, really good ones, maybe that's an inner driver or whatever. But you know, I was a bit of a role player.
I want you to think of a moment in your career where you had really, maybe I would say average or poor standard, you got dropped. Yeah, maybe let's say in Collingwood. Where when you get dropped, what is the first thing you're thinking about, and how do you get, like, we all have these phases in life where there's negativity can really hit you.
Yeah.
What did you do to get out of that?
It happened to me a couple of times at West Coast. I don't think I ever really remember being dropped in my career at Collingwood after I managed to find myself in the team properly. I got dropped after my first game, but you know, the skipper was coming back in Scotty Burns, so I think I was always going to find myself playing VFL the following week. But West Coast, I definitely found myself in some form slumps after some injury problems, after you know, being later in my career and not having that same burning desire week in, week out to go through, like I said, go through those processes and routine things. You kind of go, oh, maybe I won't do that this week, and you know, I'll won't do a gym session with a few extras at the end, and it's that kind of thing that starts sneaking in as you get a bit older, and the form obviously can reflect that unless you're an absolute superstar. And so then that's where you go, okay, now I need to go back to what I was doing. And so, I mean, conversations with a coach, you're immediately kind of feel like you're being kicked in the guts. You feel like you're worried about where your career is going, and all those thoughts obviously start, you know, spiraling in your head. But then it's, all right, I'm going to go down the hallway. I'm going to go sit with the assistant coach and you know, find out what I need to do. What are the three things that, you know, I need to improve on that will get me back in the side. And coaches are generally pretty clear on what their expectations are on you. You know, they don't go, oh, you're out this week, sorry. They're like, no, this is what you need to make sure you're working on, because this is what you can do. And it's always just about going back to, you know, what you know you can do for the team. I think that as soon as a player isn't able to do what they're kind of required, whether it be physically or often for older people, it's because they aren't mentally, I feel like they aren't as mentally committed. So their training standards drop, you know, your diet might slow down a little bit. It's all those little things that you go, all right, I've just got to tighten those screws a bit. And it happens to teams, and standards start dropping, and then form sneaks into the side, and then the team starts going down. And we always used to say it's just tighten the screws a little bit. You're not having to change everything. You're not having to reinvent the wheel. It's just, you know, giving the process a service, making sure that everything's nice and tight.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, I would like to get to know you coming from a big club from Melbourne.
The biggest.
I wouldn't say the biggest. You know, that hurts my feeling a little bit. But
Which one? Which one's bigger than the Pies?
Eagles.
No, biggest in Melbourne.
Oh, yeah, in Melbourne, yeah. Biggest club in Melbourne.
Yeah.
You're jumping in another big club in West Australia.
Yeah.
And having only two teams in West Australia makes it even harder. You know, like Melbourne, yes, it's the biggest, but there's a few clubs there.
The eyes are spread across more.
Yeah, you can hide a little bit.
Yeah.
How was that for you? And what did you need to adjust? Because everywhere you went, maybe 4 or 5 people will know you, but Melbourne could be maybe a bit different.
Yeah.
Did you have to change or shift your mindset a certain way?
You got to remember, Melbourne people love their footy.
Yeah.
So they're a little bit more in your face when it comes to their passion.
Yeah.
Yes, people around Perth might, you know, give you a second look or something like that, but they're not as excited potentially.
Yeah.
It doesn't, you know, it's not their religion.
Just me who abuses players. So maybe I should be in Melbourne.
But the two team town factor is definitely there. I mean, because whether it be the media, whether it be the supporters, they're either for or against you. Whereas sometimes a football supporter might not really care, who you play for because they go for somebody else. Being as though Collingwood, they usually hated us. If they went for another side, Whereas here, you kind of your exposure to, the media is probably a bit greater because because the eyes are only across two teams. So what you're saying about fans, it's probably not so much fans or footy people as much as it is the media, because the media only have two teams to focus on. So all of their energy goes into two teams, as you saw with Paul Harley-Reid. I couldn't even tell you, was it 29 out of 30 days he was on the back page?
It's a difficult situation. But I always say sometimes I'd rather be in that situation than not to be in. I like it when the pressure is on, because that's when you perform, that's when you change. And I actually think it's a blessing for him to be in that position.
It is a blessing that he gets to, that he's put himself, and he's managed to find himself in that situation. But I'd tend to have a thought
let me just ask you this:
is it necessary?
But let me ask you this: if you had to go back and somebody said, "I want you to choose the pressure Harley is on, or not having that pressure in AFL or in sports, what would you choose?"
I mean, my personality, that comes down to personality. I think I wouldn't like my face on the back page of the paper every day.
You won't want to have that pressure.
Well, I don't think that it brings pressure. I don't think that having your face on the paper brings pressure.
What does it do?
It's just exposure.
But I had a friend of mine who used to say to me, Tom, any news is good news, whether it's bad or good. So him being in the back of the page every week is bringing the exposure to him or exposure to the club. And from that, he can actually be able maybe to demand the 2.1 million that he wants.
Exactly. I mean, it's exposure, but a lot of it was just, cartoons or, pictures of. It wasn't really a lot of it wasn't really anything to do with football. Whereas if they're talking about football, then yes, it becomes pressure. If they're talking about, I think there's been more pressure on him this year. Because he hasn't had. Well, no, he's going well at the moment, but he didn't have a great start to the year. And so I think that's more pressure than silly back pages and things like that. That's just exposure. That's different.
But today I don't want to talk about him. I want to actually be able to understand you a little bit. What was the difference between playing for Collingwood and playing for the Eagles?
There was a big difference. I mean, I grew up going for West Coast, so it was my team that I loved as a kid.
That's why I like
you. And I used to go down to training. I remember, I was really lucky as a kid to go into the change rooms as a kid, and I remember seeing like Glenn Jakovich and Dean Kemp and Peter Matera and Chris Lewis and Chris Mainwaring, all these guys who
inspired you.
Peter Matera was my favourite. He was pretty unbelievable, especially when he was a little bit older and he had the bald head and the huge guns and he's always all oiled up. And
I miss that football. I've only heard of him. I never watched him play.
Oh, you need to watch some Peter Matera highlights.
I never watched him.
He was my favourite.
So what was the difference between playing in Collingwood and playing at the Eagles?
I moved to Melbourne having no idea about the history of Collingwood, what it meant to the community of those inner city suburbs of Melbourne, and the fan base that was attached to Collingwood. I was kind of ignorant to that, and so I went over there and I was like, wow, this thing is amazing. It's huge. It's got so much history. It's got so much influence on people's moods, and I fell in love with the club because of the history of it and the connection to Collingwood, Victoria Park, the Abbotsford region of inner city Melbourne. And so coming back to West Coast, which is a really new club in the scheme of things in terms of history when you talk about the AFL. or the VFL. So it had a really different feel of what you were representing. I remember when I'd pull on the Collingwood jumper, I'd feel like I was representing something way bigger than just the colours or you know what my feeling was. I was really representing so many people who loved the club and the history, all the in the change room, not change rooms, in the Collingwood facilities. There's pictures of 20-foot, 30-foot pictures of ex-players hanging on the walls. All the legends of the footy club, like Desi Tuddenham, Fons Kine, like Darren Mullane, all these players who'd come before, Gordon Coventry, going all the way back. And then you come to West Coast, which is the club that I grew up going for, but it's got such a short history, and it's a really successful history, and it's been successful on the field in terms of premierships, and it's been a successful financial club, and it's got a huge supporter base, but it just felt so new. And so it was a really different feeling. I felt like when I pulled on the West Coast jumper for the first time, I felt like I was representing myself and the teammates that I was with. So
there was like something bigger behind it.
I felt like I felt like I was kind of being part of making some of the early history of the club.
That's amazing.
And so that was cool because I was like, okay, imagine in 100 years' time when the club's 130 years old, and they'll go, I remember the guys who used to run around here when they were, Collingwood had been around for that time already, whereas I was kind of at the start of this club's history, which is something that I kind of thought was pretty cool.
What did you take from Collingwood that helped you at the Eagles?
I think training standards.
Were they different?
I think expectations on a level that was acceptable. I think not just training standards, but what you went out there to get out of training. And so when I got to West Coast, it was all just about being super fit at running, being able to beat your teammate, which is what you want to have to a certain level. Whereas I came from an environment at Collingwood where it was really much about making your teammate better, and how can you improve, not by beating them per se, but by making them better. And so I remember the tackling and everything at training at West Coast was so fierce, and I was like, this is pre-season training. Like you just hold them up and then move, get to the next thing. And I remember seeing scraps, and because there was so much physicality, that was a totally different environment to where I'd come from, where it was like, all right, you tackle them, you just hold them, and I've tackled you. But I think that it was a really different kind of. I was much more about the connection piece from Collingwood, about the teammates making each other better along the way, whereas West Coast, they drove each other to get better by beating each other. They're both two really good ways of improving, but I'd come from one field to another.
And the other one, you had to be better than the other one.
Yeah, exactly. So it was like that's a really good kind of visualization of it, is like, we're going to go like this, whereas West Coast was very much like that.
Climbing. Now, football has given you a lot.
Yeah, it has. Yeah. It's also taken a lot. It's taken my knees.
Nicely paid for it. What are the tools that you took out of football that have been able to help you to become a better, maybe brother, sister, partner, a son? What are the tools that you've been able to take from there?
Yeah, it's funny. Like, after you finish playing, you realise how selfish you are as a professional athlete.
You have to.
You have to be, but there's also an element of like the confidence and arrogance that goes alongside being a professional athlete. Like, players probably don't realise it because they're in a bubble, and it's a bubble that you have to be in if you want to be able to perform at your best. And so, upon reflection, I've changed a lot as a person since I finished playing football, I believe, because I realised that not everything's about me, and not everything's about making myself. I have to go to bed, I have to eat, I have to be. Everything's on my everything's on my timeline, and so the things that I take away from my time in football are also those things, like being disciplined with everything in your life is obviously something that is so ingrained to you in your football life. I don't think that I've thought that I have to live my life after football quite to that same level, but I still have a lot of discipline that someone who hasn't been in an AFL system has, whereas, you know, I've obviously relaxed it a bit, but there's still the discipline. I think that being able to be, you know, resilient is something that you learn in a football environment that I think is really big outside of football, because, you know, when you're playing footy, life's easy, life's pretty, you know, you kind of just, you're living this great lifestyle, and then you've got to be pretty resilient after footy to kind of find out where you sit in life, where you sit with your friends, where you kind of sit with your family, because you feel like you're kind of the king. And so you finish that kind of period of your life, and it's like, okay, I'm just going to, this is kind of what it feels like. It's like, all right, I'm back with everybody else that's been able to let me live this lifestyle of I'm number one. Now I feel like I've kind of gone, I'm just back around everybody else, and I'm just living my life the same as everybody else does.
So discipline has been something that you've been able to implement, like to carry out of AFL to your normal life.
Yeah, to a point. Like, I look at some players who don't give up that level of discipline, and it's like, oh, do you need to be doing that? Or
but I think you're one of them. Most AFL player, by the time you haven't played for 6-7 years,
yeah,
but you still look like you could play. So, you know, but there's some players
that
that goes. So I think you're more disciplined to be able to still look.
Yeah, well, I still love going to the gym. I still love running when I can, if I can. And that's what I mean. Like, I don't run to the same level or whatever, but I still love doing it. And when I do it, I need to have like a plan about what I'm doing. I need to have a program, and those kind of things I did pick up from footy. I'm like, I can't just go to the gym and throw around some weights. Like, I need to know what I'm doing. I need structure, and I need, you know, that's having that discipline that I learned. But I'm like, all right, if I miss a session, I'm not going to feel bad about doing it.
Yeah. Now, in AFL system, success is based on, let's say, maybe wins, maybe top 4, top 8, and winning grand final. Yeah. What is
it's a very real result driven. You either win or you don't.
Yeah. So, what is your view on success? 2010 and now. What is your definition of success after being in the system for that long? Yeah. Where success is top 8, top 4, win games, AFL.
Something that's actually tangible.
So,
it's a tough one, and your kind of focuses in life have to alter a little bit or adjust, because, I mean, you still have things that you can look at. Yeah. I mean, I did blow out a little bit. I'll show you a photo from a couple of years ago. And I made a conscious decision. Yeah. I was like, I don't want to do anything for a period of time. I don't want to go and run. I don't want to go to the gym. Yeah. And then I made the decision, okay, now I'm ready to start again. And so, I think that life obviously looks differently at you after playing, but I more so look at my life now as making sure that I'm happy and I'm enjoying myself. And what do those things look like? I guess it's have I got my amazing partner Sam? Is she happy with me? Is my family happy with me? Am I happy in my day-to-day work? I love what I do because I feel like I give back to community a lot. I love what I do in my coaching because I'm helping kids kind of try and go and live out their life. And so I look at what I've this path that I've taken, and it's put me in a place where I'm happy with what I do because I enjoy helping other people.
So for you, from trophies and numbers to being able to help people to become better, it's how you can define what success is now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's also the dollars and cents. Like now the nose is to the grindstone, and you've got to make sure that you're happy with living a life that you can provide and things like that. Which that's an added stress now as you get older, and don't earn the big bucks like you do when you're playing AFL footy,
Yes, but maybe
that's
it's
why
rewarding.
I've got to have those. That's why I've got to have those extra jobs.
Now, you mentioned before that you're helping young men,
Mm-hmm.
Indigenous men, to become better in the system. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is related to football?
Yeah, so the state program,
Okay.
coached by Mark Webb, we start this weekend actually. So we've got the first game versus Vic Country
Where?
at Mineral Resource in Lathlane,
I might
down
come
at
and
the
have a
Eagles.
look at
Yeah,
that.
come down and watch Saturday morning.
Yep, I'll come and watch that.
We've got training down here in Subiaco tonight. So, there's obviously the whole program. But then we've got some really, really talented Indigenous boys who are coming through.
Just make sure they don't go to Collingwood.
Nah,
Make sure.
young William Hayes went to Collingwood last year through our program,
That's
and he played a great game the other day.
The program is failing us.
I know.
If you can let the young, good, talented player get out, what you do, you
Well, we've
look
got
at
the
them.
NGA program, so
Yeah.
the Next Generation Academy,
Yeah.
which it's enabling West Coast and Fremantle to have.
Forget about them.
Yeah, but they're
Don't
able to
mention that
develop.
name
They're
here.
able to develop these young kids
Yeah.
much closer, and they're trying to work with the AFL at the moment in enabling them to have better access to them in terms of their training, and then not have to pay so much in the draft to retain them.
Listen, you look at the youth that are coming in.
Oh yeah, there's
The
some
top,
talent.
like the top 2, 3, when they get towards the end of the year, tell
I'm,
them
and in the game day, I'm going to be like, don't do that, don't
Yeah,
do that.
tell them
And
to
then I'm
be-
going to call the recruiters and be
exactly.
like,
now
Yeah.
we're talking. Now, these young men that you're helping, if as an Indigenous person or you're still a young fella that has gone through the system,
Yeah.
what would be one advice you'd be able to offer them if they wanted to have a piece of that cake?
One bit of advice. There's too much advice that you can probably give. One bit of advice I would be don't let the opportunity slip through your hands, because it's too great of an opportunity. They can provide for not just themselves, but they can change a cycle for their family if they come from a family that's struggling. I mean, the opportunity that the AFL gives people is massive, but then it's compounded when it's for Indigenous families, because it's unlikely that many people before this generation would have earned anywhere near as much as these young Indigenous footballers are earning. You look at Isaiah Wanganeen, who's playing at St Kilda at the moment.
Yeah. Good
Mate,
player.
he's going to be potentially earning $1.5 million.
But you know what? His football is talking. I watched him on the
100%.
weekend.
Yeah. I think that just making sure that the opportunity doesn't slip.
How can you, because you've been there, you've done it, you understand it, but this young fella, they actually don't understand it.
Yeah.
So for you, your job is to be able to empower them.
Yeah.
How could you empower that or drive that to them without pushing them too much?
Yeah.
So that they can actually understand and see that this is.
I think it's really important that they realise that the talent that they have is only going to get them so far.
Yeah.
It comes back to your hard work and your mindset to making yourself better. A lot of young, talented players, be they Indigenous or non-Indigenous, think that just because they're talented at 17, they're going to go to the AFL system and be. And someone told me, I can't remember who it was, doesn't matter about your draft pick, doesn't matter about your age, and it doesn't matter about
You are a rookie list.
Your rookie list. So you come in that door, if you prove yourself right through the hard work and dedication, that you'll be given an opportunity. And so it's really hard to kind of go from being this big fish in a small pond, being the best youngster in the country type of thing, to realizing that now you are a small fish in a big pond with sharks. And so
everybody wants a piece of it.
Everybody wants a piece. Don't let the opportunity slip. And realizing that it's not just going to happen through your talent. It's going to happen through your hard work.
I'm going to say this because you can relate to it. Western Bullock, the full forward.
Yeah.
He's struggling a lot. If you had to get on a phone call now, you had one shot at him to be able to talk to him. He is an amazing player. Like, amazing player. When actually he was drafted, people were comparing him to
Lance.
the big fella. And the big fella, but he just not going to get to that level. What will you tell him?
What would I tell him? Obviously, I'd say, mate, pull your head in. But then Yeah, if I had an opportunity to have, you'd probably need to sit with him for a couple of days and get to know him and realize what makes him tick, and then go, okay, let's sort this out. If this is what the problem is, what's the process to get through fixing the issues that are? So if it's your mental health, if it's obviously there's things off field, he's not hanging around with the right people. I just say, mate, it just comes back to don't let the opportunity slip.
I was just thinking about that.
Yeah. Like you are one of the most talented players in the country.
Just a simple advice: don't let the opportunity pass you.
Because you will wake up and you will be 40 years old and you will have missed out on your career at AFL level.
Wow. Yeah.
And at the moment, he probably doesn't care.
No. Because if he cared, he would make the
correct.
Changes.
But then how do you make someone care about something again?
You got to find their why.
Exactly.
So what makes, as you say, what makes them tick.
Yeah.
I've always told people, if you find what drives you, you'll be able to wake up in the morning. You will be disciplined, which is sacrificing something you want now for something better.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what drives you,
and I think that when you're really hungry and you really you want something, that driving factor is obviously what enables you to keep going back to training and keep going back to the gym. But or doing boring kicking 1,000 times and you're only improving a minute amount every week, but it's I've got to just keep doing the same thing and repeating. And if you don't have your why, if you don't have why am I doing this, and in footy, again, it's tangible. You're going, what's my why? Is because I want to play in a grand final. I want to also, it's different. Some people who are in a bad team might be going, I want to play in finals. Yeah. But I always, throughout my career, I played in 3 grand finals. I played in finals most years, and so.
Lucky bastard.
My thing was always, I want to get to the grand final. I didn't think about anything else.
100,000 people at the MCG.
Yeah.
You hear the song, your skipper is ahead of you, you're walking in, you can hear the song. Oh, Collingwood forever. What are you feeling? Because that for me, like I will be feeling like I'm going to kill somebody out there. But what is the feeling? Like just take us inside you and tell us how. You walk out and you look and it is packed.
Yeah, so I've got 2 kind of different views on these 2 really different experiences and how I view them now. So my first game, I walked out the tunnel, and I was like, oh my God, how incredible is this? I had a beaming smile on my face, and I was, just enthralled by it all. I was taking it all in, and I remember Josh Fraser looking at me and like giving me a hit and going, "Get switch on, mate."
It's game time.
It's game time. And then again, like that's just who I am. I'm like, off with the fairies. But compared to a game day grand final experience where, yes, you want to take it all in and you want to kind of experience it, because having sat in the stands and watched games after I finished playing, it's a different feeling in the stands. The energy in the arena is incredible. And so when you're game day, you're trying to do that. You're trying to stay focused. You're trying to obviously stay in, the mindset of I've got a job ahead of me. While also going, I'm at grand final. I want to kind of have a look around and take it all in. And so I think that I remember so little from grand final days because you're obviously, you're kind of going like this.
Switch it off.
Yeah, which is it's upsetting, but it's also obviously something you have to do.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the grand final until 2018.
You did?
Didn't watch it.
Why?
Didn't feel the need to. But watched it and it was incredible. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I watched it with Dale Thomas and we sat in his lounge room night before Collingwood played West Coast the next day.
I was there, mate.
And
one of the happiest time in my life.
Not the happiest.
I was sitting with Embley.
Yeah.
And I looked at Embley and I said, Embley, we are. He goes, I think Collingwood were 5 goals ahead.
Yeah.
He goes, no, mate, Collingwood have thrown everything to us, and it's only 5 goals.
Yeah.
And I said, and I looked at Embley and thought maybe he's smoking some weed or something. I'm like, which game is this guy watching? I said, Embley, we are gone.
Yeah.
And now I'm thinking I have to go back home, blah, blah, blah. And then the magic happened.
The magic did happen.
And now I want to ask you some quick questions. Okay?
Okay. Like quick fire.
Yeah, just quick fire. Better life advice you've ever been given?
Enjoy it.
With a coach, with the parents, or
Me give it?
Not given by a coach or a parent or a friend. Best life advice.
Dad always just says to enjoy life, and that's I love his view on life, and so just enjoy it.
Best coach.
Mick Malthouse.
Why?
His ability to get the pinching point of players, know what they needed to be told.
Pre-game superstition you're willing to admit?
There's too many.
There's
too many. I used to, do.
Say that one. Say that one. That's the one I want.
It's not even anything to do with footy.
Yeah, what is it?
But I used to have to clean the house night before the game.
I think your partner will be very happy with that. Toughest player you've ever matched up on?
2.
1. There can only be one toughest.
Nah, there's definitely 2.
Give us the first one.
Gary Ablett Jr.
And the second one?
Chris Judd.
Oh, beautiful. And the player you used to play on and you just loved it because you could beat him anytime.
Oh.
When you saw him, you were like, fuck, happy days.
I never really got that feeling. I was... Okay, who? I think just anyone from Carlton.
The best AFL friend you still have now?
Best AFL friend I still have now. Who did I meet through AFL? I was probably Chris Marston, but we were friends before AFL. But he's probably, from my time in footy, the one who I'm closest with now.
What's the game you remember playing?
Worst game I remember playing. Now, there's too many of them. I'm trying to narrow it down. A big pool.
That you left, you're like...
I can't really... Nothing stands out. Maybe it's because there were too many.
Good best game you ever played?
My most enjoyable good performance was the 2010 repeat because I played well and we won.
Yeah.
My best performance probably was King's birthday game where I had a lot of disposals and played a good game.
Best team match you've played with? One from Eagles and Collingwood. One best teammate you ever enjoyed playing? And
I loved playing with Josh Kennedy at West Coast because we had a great connection when I was playing midfield. I loved kicking it to him. I just loved kicking it to JK. And at Collingwood, I loved playing with Alan Didak.
Oh, beautiful. Now, you have a chance to be drafted in AFL, okay, at the moment. You want to be drafted to a team that is closer to winning a flag at the present time.
Yep.
And you're going to be drafted to a team that is still rebuilding to go and win the flag. Which one will it be?
Well, it's obvious, isn't it?
No, it's not obvious. Oh, yeah. Don't get cocky.
That's both of my teams. I'm picking Collingwood because they're going to be at the Premiership, and I'm doing West Coast because they're on the rebuild.
Do you actually think Eagles are the rebuild better than somebody like North Melbourne and Tigers and all that?
West Coast won't be at the bottom for long.
Okay, right. What is the future hold for Wellingham?
Continual development, personal work, and holidays, staying fit, coming into your gym.
You're most welcome. I want to see you there. I haven't seen you for a while.
I know. I go to a little private one at the.
You're not good enough, eh?
No, I go with Masto. We go to Lawson Flats in the city. It's got a nice little private gym. There's only 2 or 3 people in there.
Guess what? We've been told that's where people just go and talk. That's why you're there. You talk. You don't train. You look out of.
I don't take my phone in there with me. Just if I could see myself in 10 years' time from now.
Yeah.
What's ahead for me? Marriage, children. I don't have either of those at the moment. So.
Would they play for Collingwood or Eagles? How many games did you play for Collingwood?
102, I think.
And Eagles?
70 odd.
Don't worry about having kids.
Nah,
They'll go to Collingwood and
Yeah.
already calling father son is killing us.
yeah, I
You know,
know.
the Dacos
Killing
brothers are
Dacos
killing
brothers,
us.
yeah.
Yeah.
I know. Who would I like my kid to play for?
Be careful. You're wearing Eagles. There's an Eagles on your.
Yeah, I know. Well, the Eagles know I love them, but who would I prefer they played for?
Mm.
Oh, that's too tough. I would be happy either way,
Mhm.
and I wouldn't be unhappy with if
Whichever. It'll be sad for them to play for Carlton or Collingwood.
Oh, I wouldn't have it.
There you go. Man, really grateful for you taking your time to come and have a chat.
Thanks for having me. In.
Yeah, thank you so much. And just being able to dig into your brain and give us a bit of an insight of how you think and how you look at things. It's really, really been a pleasure.
I hope that you got out of it what you thought you were going to get out of my
I
brain.
never think about anything. Actually, I don't. And sometimes I prepare a question and then I don't even ask them.
Yeah, good.
I'm like, I'm going to ask this, and then I just go off my ferry and do things. Yeah,
It's the way to do it.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Authenticity is the key.
Man, that's what they say. I hope you can have some kids that are coming to the Eagles because we need all the help we need at the moment.
Yeah,
And
a couple
then-
of them would look pretty good in the blue and gold, wouldn't they?
Anything good will look good as long as they're good. we need one more midfielder, and then we are up and about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thanks, bro. I really appreciate that. Thank you.